Davide Brivio runs the highest-placed satellite team in MotoGP, and this week he said something a team principal is never supposed to say out loud. His rider sits second in the championship, 14 points off the lead, halfway through the season, and instead of telling you Ogura can win it, Brivio told you he is not sure his own manufacturer will even let him try. Not that Ogura is not fast enough, not that the bike is not good enough, that Aprilia might simply decide a customer team is not allowed to fight for the crown. So what does a boss know that makes him say that on the record? And who exactly is Trackhouse being protected from? Here is why that sentence should stop you. Team principals lie for a living. Their whole job is to project belief, to tell the sponsors and the paddock that the mountain is climbable. When a boss with a rider in second place refuses to do that, the silence underneath is louder than any prediction. Brivio is not managing expectations. He is telling you the ceiling on this title run was never going to be set on track. It was going to be set in a boardroom in Noale. And that ceiling has a name Aprilia has been chasing for its entire life in this class. A satellite team in MotoGP is not a partner. It is a customer. Trackhouse buys its machinery from Aprilia, runs it on Aprilia's terms, and exists on the grid because Aprilia wants a second data source. That is the deal everywhere. But this case is different. Trackhouse is not running last year's leftovers. Ogura and Raul Fernandez are on full factory specification Aprilias, the same weapon Jorge Martin and Marco Bezzecchi ride every Sunday. So the usual excuse does not apply. When a satellite rider fades, the paddock shrugs and points at old parts. That story is not available here. The bike is not the ceiling. And it gets more uncomfortable for Aprilia than that. Ogura is not just keeping up with the factory garage. He is beating half of it. 14 points off the championship lead puts him ahead of Marco Bezzecchi, a full factory rider on a full factory contract. So Aprilia is watching a customer outscore one of its own employees for the biggest prize the company has never won. That is the situation Brivio was asked about, and he refused to pretend it felt safe. So what did Brivio actually say? Asked whether Aprilia would let his team race for the championship without interference, he did not reach for reassurance. He said, "Well, if it's the two of us competing against someone else, I don't know." Hear that again. He can picture Aprilia backing Trackhouse when the enemy wears another badge. Ducati, KTM, Honda, fine. But an internal war, Ogura against Martin, satellite against factory, for a title Aprilia has never held. That is the scenario where the team principal stops guessing in his own favour. Then he told you what he is afraid of by telling you what he hopes for. Brivio said he hopes Aprilia handles this the way Ducati handled 2024, when the factory let Francesco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin settle it on track and stayed out of the way. He is not asking for special treatment. He is asking for permission to compete. A man whose rider is second in the world is publicly hoping his employer will simply allow a fair fight. And here is the part Brivio slid right past, the part that turns this from a plea into a warning. The rider Aprilia would be protecting, Jorge Martin, is the exact reason any factory should be terrified of that Ducati precedent, because in 2024, Ducati let the satellite fight and the satellite won. Martin took that title on a Pramac bike, a customer bike, the only independent rider to win the Premier class in the MotoGP era. He beat the factory man to do it. So when Brivio points at Ducati and says do it like they did, every executive in Noale hears the second half of that sentence. Do it like Ducati, and you might hand your first ever crown to a team that is not really yours. Now lay the drought on top. Aprilia has raced in this class for decades and never won it. Their first Premier class victory of any kind did not arrive until 2022. This title, if it comes, is the biggest moment in the company's racing life, and Brivio is asking them to risk giving it away to a customer garage running their bikes under a NASCAR owner's banner. You already know how that math feels in a boardroom. And do not mistake this for a hypothetical. Brivio admitted the whole championship has cracked open. It's a new situation, he said, pointing at Marc Marquez, erasing a 50 or 60-point deficit in a couple of rounds and calling it giving hope to everybody. The title is no longer drifting toward one man. It is live, it is reachable, and Ogura is closer to it than anyone except Martin. The permission question stopped being theoretical the moment that gap became 14 points. So let's name what this story is really about, because it is not what the standings tell you. Look at Trackhouse sitting second, and you assume the only questions left are the normal ones. Can Ogura handle the pressure? Can a satellite crew match a factory war room over a full season? Those are real questions. They are also the wrong ones. Not one of them is what Brivio is actually afraid of. The real ceiling on this title run is not talent, and it is not the machine. It is a willingness. Aprilia's willingness to be beaten by a team that pays them for bikes. And that is a completely different kind of limit, because a rider can train harder and an engineer can find more grip. But nobody at Trackhouse gets a vote in Aprilia's boardroom. That is the truth sitting under Brivio's honesty. The fastest thing at Trackhouse this year is not the bike, it is the reason they might still lose. And once you see it that way, the whole season reframes. Every Ogura podium is not just a result. It is a problem landing on Aprilia's desk, forcing a decision the company has spent its whole history avoiding. Do you want to win at all costs? Or do you want to win with the right name on the tank? Brivio already suspects which one they will choose. That is exactly why he said, "I don't know," rather than promise a win. Here is where I land. When a team principal with a rider in second place says he is not sure his manufacturer will let him compete, that is not humility. That is a man reading the incentive in front of him and refusing to insult you with a lie. Aprilia has waited its whole existence for this. When the moment comes to choose between winning with Jorge Martin, their factory rider and chosen face, and winning with Ogura, a customer they can wave goodbye to at any time, the honest answer is the one Brivio already gave. He does not know. And "I don't know" from the man closest to the situation sits a lot closer to probably not than the standings admit. One last detail makes his candour make sense. Brivio is leaving. He is off to Honda at the end of the year, walking away from Trackhouse and Aprilia. He has no contract left to protect and no future favours to bank, so he said the quiet part while he still could. Trackhouse might have the second fastest rider in the world. What they do not have, and may never be given, is Aprilia's permission to prove it. So it was never really about whether Ogura is fast enough. It is about whether Aprilia will ever let him prove it. Would you back a title bid your own factory might quietly veto? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.